The red suitcase lay open on the bed like a wound. Brielle Thompson Foster folded another blouse with trembling hands, tears blurring her vision as she packed away pieces of a life that never truly began. Outside the mansion's tall windows, rain hammered against the glass, each drop echoing the emptiness that had hollowed out her heart over the past 12 months. 12 months. 1 full year of sleeping alone in a king-sized bed while her husband occupied a bedroom in the opposite wing. 1 year of empty chairs across from her at breakfast. 1 year of silence so thick it pressed against her chest until she couldn't breathe. 1 year of wondering what she'd done wrong, what fatal flaw made her so easy to ignore. Tonight was their anniversary. He forgot. Brielle sank onto the edge of the bed, her emerald green dress, the one she'd worn hoping he'd notice, now wrinkled and damp from her tears. She'd waited in the dining room for 3 hours, watching the candles melt into shapeless puddles, the expensive anniversary dinner growing cold. The chef had given her a pitying look before leaving for the night. The household staff knew. Everyone knew. The billionaire's wife was nothing more than a ghost haunting the halls of his empire. She pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. This wasn't the life she'd imagined when Julian Foster proposed on that beach in Malibu, getting down on one knee with a diamond ring that cost more than most people's houses. She'd been so sure of his love then. His eyes had been warm, his smile genuine. He'd told her she was his future, his everything, the missing piece he'd been searching for. What changed? Their wedding had been beautiful. 400 guests, a designer gown, flowers flown in from 3 different countries. She'd felt like a princess walking down that aisle toward the man she loved. But when the reception ended and they'd arrived at their honeymoon suite, Julian had kissed her forehead, mumbled something about being tired, and slept on the couch. She'd cried herself to sleep in the massive bed, alone, confused, heartbroken. It never got better. He threw himself into his work, leaving before dawn and returning after midnight. When they were in the same room he could barely look at her. No touches, no kisses, no warmth. Just polite nods and distant smiles that never reached his eyes. She tried everything. Romantic dinners, wearing beautiful clothes, planning trips, asking him directly what was wrong. He always had the same answer, nothing. I'm just busy. You have everything you need. But she didn't have him. Brielle picked up her phone and stared at the text she'd sent 3 hours ago. Happy anniversary. I'm waiting for you in the dining room. No response. Not even the courtesy of a read receipt. She tossed the phone onto the bed and stood, moving mechanically toward the closet to grab more clothes. Dawn was 6 hours away. She'd called Kendra, her best friend, who would pick her up at sunrise. No note, no explanation. Just gone. Maybe then he'd feel something. Maybe her absence would matter more than her presence ever did. The walk-in closet was the size of most people's apartments, filled with designer clothes Julian's personal shopper had bought for her. Brielle grabbed a handful of bright-colored dresses, the blues and reds and greens she'd worn hoping to catch his attention, and stuffed them into the suitcase. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was a wealthy woman by marriage, living in a mansion with servants and luxury cars, but she'd never felt poorer. You couldn't buy love. You couldn't purchase intimacy. Money meant nothing when you went to bed every night feeling worthless. A knock on the door made her freeze. Her heart stuttered. The staff never disturbed her this late. She glanced at the clock, 12:47 a.m. Brielle? Julian's voice cut through the door, and something in his tone made her blood run cold. Not the usual distant politeness. Something raw, almost desperate. She wiped her eyes quickly, trying to compose herself, but knew it was pointless. Her face was swollen from crying, her carefully applied makeup smeared beyond repair. "Come in," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The door opened slowly. Julian Foster stood in the doorway, and for the first time in a year, he truly looked at her. Not past her, not through her, but at her. His gray eyes, usually so guarded and cold, were wide with something she couldn't quite name. Fear? Regret? His 6'2" frame filled the doorway, his expensive suit rumpled, his dark hair disheveled as though he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. His gaze dropped to the open suitcase on the bed, then traveled to the pile of clothes beside it, finally landing on her tear-stained face. The color drained from his features. "You're leaving." It wasn't a question. Brielle lifted her chin, trying to find some shred of dignity in this moment. "Yes." "When?" "Dawn." Julian took a step into the room, then another, his movements careful, as though approaching a wounded animal that might bolt. "Because I forgot our anniversary." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Because you forgot we're married, Julian. The anniversary is just another reminder of that fact." He flinched as though she'd slapped him. Good. Let him feel something for once. He stopped, his jaw working as he struggled with words that clearly didn't come easily. I know I've hurt you. You've ignored me for an entire year. Brielle's voice cracked, but she pushed forward, needing him to hear this, needing to speak the truth that had been suffocating her. Do you know what that does to a person? To feel invisible in your own home? To wonder every single day what's so wrong with you that your own husband can't stand to be in the same room as you? Nothing is wrong with you, Julian said, his voice rough. He took another step closer. Brielle, nothing is wrong with you. Then why? The question exploded from her, all the anguish of the past 12 months pouring out. Why did you marry me if you didn't want me? Why put a ring on my finger if you were just going to treat me like a stranger? Was I just some trophy to add to your collection? The billionaire's beautiful wife to show off at events? No. The word came out fierce, almost angry. Never that. Then what? Brielle demanded, tears flowing freely now. She didn't care anymore. Let him see what he'd done. Let him witness the destruction he'd caused. Tell me what I did to deserve this. Tell me why I'm not good enough for you. Julian closed the remaining distance between them, and suddenly he was right there, close enough that she could see the lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the way his chest rose and fell with rapid breaths. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, that familiar scent that used to make her feel safe. You're too good for me, he said, his voice breaking. That's the problem. Brielle stared at him, confusion cutting through her pain. What? You're too good for me and I'm too broken for you. His hands clenched into fists at his sides and she saw them tremble. I married you because I love you. I've loved you from the moment I met you. But I'm not. I can't. He turned away, his shoulders hunched, and for the first time since she'd known him, Julian Foster looked vulnerable. Lost. Scared. I'm a coward, Brielle. The worst kind. I let my fear destroy the best thing that ever happened to me. He turned back to face her, and the rawness in his expression stole her breath. Don't leave. Please. Give me a chance to explain. To fix this. If you still want to go after you hear what I have to say, I'll arrange for whatever you need. Money, a house, anything. I'll give you everything. But please just listen first. The room fell silent except for the rain against the windows and the thunder of her own heartbeat. Brielle looked at the man she'd married, seeing something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Genuine emotion. Vulnerability. Pain that maybe matched her own. She should say no. She should finish packing and leave this cold mansion and this distant man behind. But something held her back. Some small, fragile hope she'd thought had died months ago. Talk, she said finally. I'll listen. But Julian, if this is just another excuse, another way to avoid the truth, I'm walking out that door and never looking back. He nodded, relief flooding his features even as fear remained in his eyes. Sit down. Please. This is going to take a while. Brielle sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Julian paced for a moment, gathering his thoughts, then stopped in front of her. He didn't sit. Instead, he stood there, towering over her, and began to speak words that would change everything. 3 years ago, before I met you, I was in a car accident. Do you want to know what happened in that accident that made a billionaire too terrified to love his own wife? If you're invested in Brielle and Julian's story, comment below what you think went wrong. And subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because the truth is more heartbreaking than you can imagine. The words hung in the air between them. Brielle watched Julian's face as he spoke, saw the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes focused on something far away, reliving a moment he'd clearly tried to forget. I don't talk about it, he continued, his voice low. Not with my family, not with friends, not with anyone. But you deserve to know. You've deserved to know from the beginning. Tell me, Brielle said softly. Julian took a deep breath. It was late. I was driving back from a business meeting in San Francisco. The roads were wet, visibility was poor. A truck crossed into my lane, no warning. I swerved, lost control. My car went off the side of the road, rolled 3 times before hitting a tree. Brielle's hand flew to her mouth. Julian. I was trapped for 2 hours before emergency services found me. Multiple broken bones, internal bleeding, punctured lung. His voice remained steady, clinical, as though recounting someone else's story. They said it was a miracle I survived. 6 months of hospitals, surgeries, physical therapy. I recovered, obviously. Mostly? Brielle prompted when he fell silent. He turned away from her, facing the window where rain continued to streak down the glass. The accident left scars. Physical ones. On my chest, my back, my side. They're extensive. Raised, discolored. Not pretty to look at. Understanding began to dawn on Brielle, but she stayed quiet, letting him finish. I went through a dark period after, Julian admitted. Depression, anxiety. I couldn't stand to look at myself. The man I'd been, athletic, confident, proud of how I looked. That person was gone. In his place was someone broken, scarred, damaged. I did therapy, took medication, slowly pulled myself back together. Built my company even bigger than before, threw myself into work. Convinced myself I could still have a full life. He turned back to her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. Then I met you. At the charity gala, Brielle whispered, remembering. She'd been working as an event coordinator, and he'd been the keynote speaker. You were wearing a blue dress, Julian said, a ghost of a smile crossing his lips. You were talking to a group of kids from the youth program, and you were so animated, so alive. You made them laugh. And when you smiled. He shook his head. I couldn't breathe. I knew in that moment I wanted to know you. I wanted you in my life. So you asked me to dinner? Brielle said. Best decision I ever made. Julian's expression darkened. And the most selfish. Because I knew from the start I was broken and I pursued you anyway. I told myself I could handle it, that my feelings for you were strong enough to overcome my issues. I proposed because I genuinely wanted to spend my life with you. I meant every word of my vows. Then what happened? Brielle asked, though pieces were starting to fit together. Julian moved to the bed and sat beside her, maintaining a careful distance. Our wedding night. You looked so beautiful, so happy. And all I could think about was what you'd see when I took off my shirt. The horror in your eyes when you saw the scars. The disgust. The pity. I couldn't face it. Brielle's heart twisted. So you slept on the couch. And hated myself for it, Julian said. You looked so hurt, so confused. I wanted to explain, but I couldn't find the words. So I told myself I'd tell you the next day. But the next day came and I chickened out again. And again. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The longer I waited, the worse it got. How do you explain to your wife that you've been avoiding her for months because you're ashamed of how you look? You could have just told me, Brielle said, anger mixing with her pain. I would have understood. Would you? Julian's eyes met hers. Be honest, Brielle. If I'd told you before we got married that I had severe scarring, that I was terrified of physical intimacy, would you have still wanted to marry me? Brielle opened her mouth to say yes automatically, then stopped. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe. Probably. But Julian, you didn't give me the choice. You let me believe the problem was me. Do you know how many nights I lay awake wondering what I'd done wrong? How many times I looked in the mirror and picked apart every flaw, trying to figure out why you didn't want me? Guilt washed over Julian's features. I know. I'm so sorry. You're right. I was a coward. I still am. Why tonight? Brielle asked. Why tell me now? Because I came home early for once, hoping to surprise you for our anniversary. I know I'm 12 hours late, but I did remember. I bought you this. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small jewelry box. When I got here, the house was dark. The dining room was set up, but cold. The chef told me you'd waited for hours. I went looking for you and saw the light under your door. Then I saw the suitcase and realized I'd lost you. He handed her the box. Brielle opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a heart, split down the middle. On one half was engraved her name, on the other his. I had it made specially, Julian said. 2 halves of one heart. That's what I hoped we'd be. But I ruined it before we ever had a chance. Tears spilled down Brielle's cheeks again. The necklace was beautiful, but it felt like too little, too late. Why should I stay, Julian? You've already admitted you're too scared to be a real husband to me. How is that fair to either of us? It's not, he said simply. You have every right to leave. If you do, I'll make sure you're taken care of. I'll set up accounts in your name, buy you a house wherever you want to live, make sure you never have to worry about money. It's the least I can do after what I've put you through. I don't want your money, Brielle said, frustration rising. I never wanted your money. I wanted you. Then give me 1 month, Julian said suddenly. 30 days. Let me prove to you that I can change, that I can be the husband you deserve. I've started seeing a therapist again. I'm committed to working through this. If after 30 days you still want to leave, I won't stop you. But please, Brielle, give me one chance to fix what I broke. Brielle stared at him, her mind spinning. Part of her wanted to walk away, to save herself from more heartbreak. But another part, the part that had fallen in love with this man 2 years ago, wanted to believe he could change. That they could have the marriage she dreamed of. 1 month, she heard herself say. But I need to see real effort, Julian. Not just promises. Actions. If you slip back into your old patterns, I'm gone. Relief flooded Julian's face, so profound it was almost painful to witness. Thank you. You won't regret this, I promise. I hope not, Brielle said quietly. She gestured to the suitcase. I should unpack this. I'll help, Julian offered, standing. They worked in silence, folding clothes and returning them to the closet. It was strange, this domestic moment, something they'd never shared before. When the last item was put away, Julian turned to her. It's late. You should get some sleep. Brielle nodded, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming her. The emotional roller coaster of the night had drained her completely. Julian moved toward the door, then paused. Brielle? Tomorrow would you have dinner with me? A real dinner, just the two of us. No distractions, no excuses. I want to take you on a proper date. Despite everything, a small smile tugged at Brielle's lips. A date with my own husband. What a concept. I know. I have a lot to make up for. He gave her a tentative smile of his own. Good night, Brielle. Good night, Julian. After he left, Brielle changed into her nightgown and climbed into bed. The necklace sat on her nightstand, catching the dim light. She picked it up, running her fingers over the engraved names. 2 halves of 1 heart. Maybe it wasn't too late to put those halves together after all. The next morning, Brielle woke to sunlight streaming through her windows and the smell of fresh coffee. She blinked, disoriented, then remembered the events of the previous night. The fight, the confession, the agreement to try for 30 days. A knock on her door made her sit up. Come in. Julian entered carrying a tray with breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit, and coffee just the way she liked it. He was dressed casually in jeans and a blue button-down shirt, his hair still slightly damp from a shower. Good morning, he said, setting the tray on the bedside table. I made breakfast. Well, I helped the chef make breakfast. I'm not going to lie and say I'm suddenly a master cook. Brielle couldn't help but smile. This was already more effort than she'd seen in the entire past year. Thank you. You're welcome. He hesitated, then said, I cleared my schedule for the day. I thought we could spend it together. If you want. Really? Brielle couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. Really? No work, no calls, no distractions. Just you and me. Julian's expression was earnest. I called your friend Kendra this morning and explained that you're not leaving. I hope that's okay. She had some choice words for me, but I deserved every one of them. Brielle laughed despite herself. That sounds like Kendra. She loves you very much. You're lucky to have a friend like that. Julian moved toward the door. Take your time with breakfast. Whenever you're ready, meet me in the foyer. I have something planned. After he left, Brielle ate slowly, her mind racing. She wanted to be hopeful, but fear held her back. What if this was just a temporary effort? What if in a week or 2 weeks, Julian slipped back into his old patterns? Could she survive being disappointed again? But he'd cleared his entire schedule. For her. That had to mean something. She showered and dressed in a comfortable red sundress, then made her way downstairs. Julian was waiting, and his face lit up when he saw her. You look beautiful, he said. Brielle felt a blush rise to her cheeks. Where are we going? You'll see. He led her to the garage, but instead of one of his luxury cars, he gestured to a more modest sedan. I thought we'd take something less flashy. I want this day to be about us, not about money or status. They drove into the city, and Julian parked near a small art gallery in a quiet neighborhood. I remember you mentioned once that you loved art but never had time to visit galleries. I thought we could start here. Brielle's heart squeezed. He'd remembered such a small detail from a conversation months ago. I'd love that. They spent 2 hours wandering through the gallery, looking at paintings and sculptures. Julian asked her about her favorite pieces, why certain colors or subjects appealed to her. They debated the meaning of abstract works, laughed at some of the more bizarre installations. It felt easy, natural, like the conversations they'd had when they were first dating. I'm discovering I don't know you as well as I thought, Julian admitted as they stood in front of a large landscape painting. I knew you loved art, but I didn't know you preferred Impressionism. Or that you can identify different artists' styles by their brushstrokes. My grandmother was a painter, Brielle explained. She taught me to look closely to see the details most people miss. Tell me about her, Julian said. So Brielle did. She told him about growing up with her grandmother in a small apartment, How they'd had very little money but an abundance of love. How her grandmother had painted murals on the walls to make their home feel larger, more colorful. How she taught Brielle that beauty could exist anywhere if you looked for it. "She sounds amazing," Julian said. "Is she still alive?" "Yes, but she's in a nursing home now. Alzheimer's." Brielle's voice caught. "I visit her every week, but she doesn't always remember me anymore." Julian took her hand gently. The touch was tentative, careful, but it was there. "I'm sorry. That must be so hard." They left the gallery and walked to a small cafe nearby. Over coffee and pastries, Julian told her about his own childhood. His parents' divorce when he was 8. His father's obsession with building wealth. His mother's quiet strength as she raised him alone. "I don't talk about this much," Julian admitted. "It's easier to focus on the success story, the self-made billionaire narrative. But the truth is I was pretty lonely as a kid. My dad was always working, and when he left, I blamed myself. I thought if I'd been better, smarter, more interesting, maybe he would have stayed." "That wasn't your fault," Brielle said firmly. "I know that now. But it shaped me. Made me think I had to be perfect to be worthy of love." He met her eyes. "Then I got those scars and my whole identity crumbled. If I wasn't the perfect, successful, attractive version of myself, who was I?" "You're Julian," Brielle said. "The man who built a tech empire from nothing. Who donates millions to charity every year. Who remembers small details about people. Who has kind eyes when he lets his guard down. That's who you are, scars or not." Julian's eyes glistened with moisture. "I'm trying to believe that." They spent the afternoon walking through a nearby park, talking about everything and nothing. Julian told her about his company, explaining what he did in terms she could understand. Brielle told him about her dream of opening a community center for underprivileged children, a place where kids could learn art, music, sports, anything that interested them. "That's a beautiful dream," Julian said. "Have you thought about making it real?" "I've thought about it constantly," Brielle admitted. "But starting something like that requires money I don't have. I'd need a building, staff, supplies, insurance. It's overwhelming." Julian stopped walking and turned to face her. "What if I funded it? The whole thing. Building, staff, supplies, whatever you need." Brielle's first instinct was to refuse. Felt like too much, too generous. But then she remembered what he'd said about accepting help with gratitude. This wasn't charity. This was her husband offering to support her dream. "Are you serious?" she asked. "Completely. You have the vision, the passion. I have the resources. We'd make a great team." His eyes were bright with enthusiasm. "Think about it. We could find the perfect location, hire the best staff, create something that really makes a difference in kids' lives." Tears pricked Brielle's eyes, but this time they were happy tears. "Thank you. Yes. I'd love that." Julian smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face. "Consider it done. We'll start looking at properties next week." They continued walking, and Julian reached for her hand again. This time, Brielle squeezed back, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. It was such a simple gesture, but after a year of no physical contact, it felt monumental. As the sun began to set, they returned to the car. On the drive home, Julian said, "I know one good day doesn't make up for a year of neglect." "No," Brielle agreed. "But it's a start." "I want every day to be like this," Julian said. "Well, maybe not exactly like this. But I want us to talk, to connect, to actually be married. No more distance." "That's what I want too," Brielle said softly. When they arrived home, Julian walked her to her bedroom door. He didn't come in, respecting the boundaries that still existed between them. But before he left, he leaned down and kissed her forehead, his lips lingering for just a moment. "Sweet dreams, Brielle." "Sweet dreams, Julian." As she got ready for bed, Brielle noticed the necklace still sitting on her nightstand. She picked it up and fastened it around her neck. The pendant settled against her chest, two halves of a heart resting above her own beating heart. Maybe they could make this work after all. Over the next week, Julian kept his promise. Every morning he brought Brielle breakfast. Every evening they had dinner together in the small dining room, not the formal one where she'd waited alone on their anniversary. They talked for hours, learning the small details that build intimacy. Favorite books, childhood memories, fears and hopes. Julian held her hand more now. Sometimes when they watched movies together, he'd put his arm around her shoulders. The touches were still tentative, but they were there, building slowly toward something deeper. On Saturday morning, Brielle was working on plans for the community center when Julian appeared in the doorway of her study, looking nervous. "Everything okay?" she asked. "My mother called," he said. She's in town for the weekend and wants to have lunch with us. I know it's short notice, but I'd love to meet her, Brielle said quickly. She'd been wondering why she hadn't met Julian's family yet. Another mystery explained by his emotional walls. Relief washed over Julian's face. Really? She can be a bit intense. Very direct. I can handle direct, Brielle assured him. They met Patricia Foster at an elegant restaurant downtown. Patricia was a striking woman in her early 60s, with silver hair styled in a sleek bob and sharp blue eyes that assessed everything. She wore a maroon jacket over a cream blouse, tasteful jewelry, and an expression that suggested she didn't suffer fools. When she saw Brielle, however, her entire face softened. She stood and immediately pulled Brielle into a warm hug. Finally, Patricia said, I've been wanting to meet you for so long. Julian kept making excuses about why we couldn't visit. Julian had the grace to look embarrassed. Mom? Oh, hush, Patricia said, waving him off. She turned her full attention to Brielle. You're even more beautiful than your wedding photos. That color looks gorgeous on you. Brielle glanced down at her bright green dress. Thank you, Mrs. Foster. Please call me Patricia. We're family. She settled back into her seat and fixed Julian with a pointed look. Now, are you going to tell me why you've been hiding your wife from me for a year, or do I have to guess? Julian's jaw tensed. Mom, this isn't the time. When is the time, darling? I'm your mother. I know when something's wrong. Patricia's expression gentled. Is this about the accident? The question hung in the air. Brielle glanced at Julian, who looked like he wanted to disappear. She reached over and took his hand, offering silent support. You know about the accident? Julian asked quietly. Of course I know. I'm not blind, and I certainly didn't miss the 6 months you spent recovering or the year of therapy afterward. Patricia's eyes were kind but firm. I also know you've been struggling with body image issues since then. I begged you to continue therapy, but you insisted you were fine. I thought I was, Julian said. Clearly not, if you've been keeping this lovely woman at arm's length. Patricia turned to Brielle. He told you about the scars? Brielle nodded. Recently. And you're still here, which means you're either very patient or very much in love with my stubborn son. Possibly both. Patricia smiled warmly. I'm glad. Julian needs someone who sees past his defenses. He's been hiding behind his success for too long. The waiter arrived to take their orders, providing a brief respite from the intense conversation. After he left, Patricia leaned back in her chair and studied them both. So, what's changed? Why are we finally having this lunch? Julian and Brielle exchanged glances. Julian cleared his throat. Brielle almost left me last week. It was the wake-up call I needed to stop being a coward and start facing my problems. Good for her, Patricia said bluntly. You deserved it. What a waste of a year, Julian. A whole year you could have been happy together, building a real marriage. I know, Mom. Well, better late than never, I suppose. Patricia turned her piercing gaze to Brielle. He's lucky to have you. Not many women would give him a second chance after that kind of neglect. I love him, Brielle said simply. And I think, despite everything, he loves me too. Oh, he does, Patricia assured her. He's talked about you nonstop since the day you met. He just forgot how to show it. She paused as their food arrived, then continued. Now, what are you two planning to do with yourselves besides finally act like a married couple? Brielle wants to open a community center for underprivileged children, Julian said, his voice warming with pride. Arts, music, sports programs. I'm funding it. Patricia's eyes lit up. What a wonderful idea. Tell me more. Brielle explained her vision, the kind of center she wanted to create, the impact it could have on the community. Patricia listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering suggestions. I know several people who could help, Patricia said. Architects who specialize in community spaces, educators who could consult on programming. I'd be happy to make introductions. Really? Brielle felt a surge of gratitude. That would be amazing. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'll expect regular updates on progress, and I plan to be at the grand opening. Patricia smiled. It's about time the Foster family did something meaningful with its wealth beyond just making more money. They spent the rest of lunch talking about the community center, Patricia's own charity work, and family history. Brielle learned that Julian's grandfather had been a factory worker, that the family's wealth was only 2 generations old, built through hard work and smart investments. Never forget where you come from, Patricia told Brielle. Julian sometimes does. He gets so caught up in being successful that he forgets what really matters. I'm working on that, Julian said quietly. I can see you are, Patricia said, her expression softening. And I'm proud of you for finally getting help. Therapy isn't weakness, darling. It's strength. As they finished their meal, Patricia reached across the table and took both Brielle's and Julian's hands in hers. I'm going to tell you something I learned the hard way. Marriage is work. It requires showing up every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. You have to choose each other over and over again. She squeezed their hands. Julian, you have a second chance with this remarkable woman. Don't waste it. Brielle, you have a husband who's finally ready to be a husband. Help him, but don't let him hide behind his fears. Hold him accountable. I will, Brielle promised. We both will, Julian added. Patricia released their hands and sat back, satisfied. Good. Now let's order dessert. And Brielle, I want your phone number. I think you and I are going to be good friends. As they left the restaurant later, Patricia hugged them both. Julian, walk me to my car. I want a moment alone with my son. Julian looked nervous but complied. Brielle watched them walk away, seeing Patricia speaking earnestly while Julian listened, nodding occasionally. When they returned, Julian looked lighter somehow, as though a weight had been lifted. In the car on the way home, Brielle asked, "What did she say?" "That she's proud of me. That you're good for me. And that if I mess this up again she'll disown me." He grinned. She was only half joking about that last part. "I like her," Brielle said. "She's direct but kind. She likes you too." "I could tell." Julian reached over and took her hand. "Thank you for being so gracious with her. I know family meetings can be awkward." "It wasn't awkward at all. It was nice." Brielle squeezed his hand. "I'm glad I finally got to meet her." That evening, as they sat together in the library, Julian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and smiled. "It's my mom." He answered on speaker. "Hi, Mom." "Julian, I just sent you the contact information for 3 architects and 2 education consultants for Brielle's community center project. Also, I'm hosting a fundraiser next month for children's literacy. I want you and Brielle to attend, and I'm going to announce the community center there. It'll help generate donations and community support." "Mom, that's too much," Julian protested. "Nonsense. This is exactly the kind of project our family should be supporting. Brielle, are you there?" "I'm here," Brielle said. "Perfect. I'll call you tomorrow with more details. Julian, take care of this woman. She's a treasure." "I know, Mom. I will." After Patricia hung up, Julian shook his head with a bemused smile. "When my mother gets involved in something, she doesn't do it halfway." "I can see where you get your drive from," Brielle teased. "Yeah, well, hopefully I inherited her good qualities too." He set down his phone and turned to face her. "Brielle, having you meet my mother, it felt right. Like pieces of my life are finally coming together the way they should." "I felt that too," Brielle admitted. Julian leaned over and kissed her cheek, lingering for just a moment longer than before. "Thank you for giving me this chance." "Thank you for finally taking it," Brielle whispered back. Progress, she thought. They were making real progress. The following Monday, Brielle found herself sitting in a glass-walled conference room at Julian's company headquarters, surrounded by architects, designers, and Patricia Foster, who had flown back specifically for this meeting. "I've identified 3 potential properties," said Thomas Reynolds, one of the architects Patricia had recommended. He pulled up images on the large screen. "This first one is a former elementary school that's been vacant for 2 years. It already has classrooms, a gymnasium, and a large outdoor space." Brielle leaned forward, studying the images. The building was older, brick with large windows, but it had good bones. "What's the neighborhood like?" "Mixed income, predominantly families. There's a need for after-school programs in this area." Thomas clicked to the next slide. "The building would need updates, but the structure is sound." They went through all 3 properties, discussing pros and cons. Brielle felt overwhelmed by the decisions, the money being discussed so casually, but Patricia noticed and patted her hand. "Start with what feels right to you," Patricia advised. "This is your project. We're just here to help make it happen." "The school," Brielle said after a moment. "The first property. It already has the layout we need, and I love the idea of breathing new life into a place that used to serve children." Julian smiled. "The school it is." Over the next weeks, Brielle threw herself into the project. With Julian's financial backing and Patricia's connections, things moved quickly. She met with contractors, reviewed design plans, interviewed potential staff members. Julian accompanied her to every meeting, offering input but always deferring to her vision. This is your project, he reminded her. I'm just the financial support. You're more than that, Brielle insisted. They were standing in the empty school gymnasium, surrounded by blueprints and paint samples. You've been to every meeting, helped with every decision. This is ours, not just mine. Julian looked touched. I like the sound of that. Ours. One afternoon, Julian surprised her by bringing a group of local kids to visit the construction site. I thought you might want some input from your future clients, he explained. The children, ranging from ages 7 to 14, walked through the space with wide eyes. Brielle talked to them about the programs they were planning: art classes, music lessons, basketball leagues, tutoring sessions. Will it really be free? Asked a girl named Destiny who couldn't have been more than 10. Completely free, Brielle confirmed. We want this to be a place where every child in the neighborhood feels welcome. Can we learn to paint? Asked another child, Marcus. Absolutely. We're setting up a full art studio upstairs. What about computers? Asked an older boy named Terrell. My school's computers are old and half of them don't work. We're installing a computer lab with brand new equipment, Julian said. And we'll have tutors to help with homework and teach coding if you're interested. The kids' excitement was contagious. They ran through the space, claiming which classrooms they wanted for different activities, suggesting ideas Brielle hadn't considered. By the time they left, Brielle had pages of notes and a heart full of purpose. This is going to change lives, Julian said quietly as they watched the kids leave with their program coordinator. Yours and theirs. I couldn't do it without you, Brielle said. She turned to him and without thinking rose on her toes and kissed his cheek. Thank you for believing in this. In me. Julian's hand came up to cup her face gently. I believe in you more than you know. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Julian's thumb brushed across her cheekbone, his eyes searching hers. Brielle held her breath, wondering if he would kiss her. Really kiss her. But then Julian stepped back, letting his hand fall. We should head back. You have another meeting with the music program director at 4. Disappointment flickered through Brielle, but she pushed it aside. They were making progress in other ways. Physical intimacy would come when Julian was ready. That weekend, Kendra finally visited the mansion. Brielle had been updating her friend by phone, but Kendra wanted to see the changes for herself. I still can't believe you stayed, Kendra said as they sat in the garden, sipping iced tea. After what he put you through. I almost didn't, Brielle admitted. But Kendra, he's trying so hard. He's completely different than he was a month ago. Actions over words, Kendra said firmly. He can try all he wants, but what matters is follow through. He's following through. The community center, the time he's spending with me meeting his mother. He cleared his schedule and now works from home 3 days a week just to be around more. Kendra studied her friend's face. You're glowing. I haven't seen you this happy in over a year. I am happy, Brielle realized. For the first time since the wedding, I actually feel like I'm married. Like I have a partner. Good. Kendra's expression softened. You deserve that. But Brielle, be careful with your heart. I don't want to see you hurt again. I know. I'm being careful. But I also can't live in fear of what might happen. I have to trust that the progress we're making is real. Julian appeared in the garden, carrying a tray with fresh tea and cookies. Kendra, it's good to see you again. Julian. Kendra's tone was polite but wary. I owe you an apology, Julian said, setting down the tray. You were right to be angry with me when I called to tell you Brielle wasn't leaving. I hurt her badly, and as her best friend, you have every right to be protective. Kendra raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting this. Go on. I'm working to be better. To be the husband Brielle deserves. I can't change the past year, but I'm committed to making the future different. He met Kendra's eyes directly. I love her. I know I did a terrible job of showing it, but I do. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it. There was a long moment of silence. Then Kendra nodded slowly. Okay, but I'm watching you. One slip and you'll make sure I regret it, Julian finished. I wouldn't expect anything less. After Julian left them alone again, Kendra turned to Brielle with wide eyes. Okay, that was impressive. Told you he's changed, Brielle said with a smile. As the sun set, Julian found Brielle in her study, working on grant applications for the community center's ongoing funding. Come with me, he said. I want to show you something. He led her to his wing of the mansion, through rooms she'd never been invited into before. They stopped at his bedroom door. I want you to see this, Julian said. All of it. He opened the door. The room was simpler than she'd expected. decorated in shades of blue and gray. Books lined one wall. Large windows overlooked the gardens. It felt like him, elegant but understated. "This is where I've been hiding for the past year," Julian said. "I want you to see it because I don't want any more secrets between us. No more closed doors." Brielle walked into the room taking it all in. "It's nice. Peaceful." "It's been my sanctuary," Julian admitted. "But it's also been my prison. I've locked myself away here, convinced I was protecting you from my damage. But I was really just being a coward." He moved to the dresser and pulled open the top drawer. From inside he took out a folder. "These are photos from before the accident. I kept them as a reminder of what I'd lost." Brielle took the folder and opened it. The photos showed a younger Julian, athletic and confident, shirtless on a beach, wearing running gear after a marathon. He looked happy, carefree. "You were handsome," she said. "I thought my looks were part of my worth," Julian said. "When they changed, I didn't know who I was anymore." "Can I see the scars?" Brielle asked gently. Julian tensed. "Brielle?" "You don't have to," she said quickly. "But I want you to know that whenever you're ready, I'm not going to be horrified. I'm not going to run away. Your scars are part of your story, part of what made you who you are today." Julian's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not ready yet. But soon. I promise." "That's okay," Brielle said. She set down the folder and took his hands. "We'll move at your pace. But Julian, thank you for showing me this room, for sharing those photos. It means a lot that you're letting me in." "I want to let you all the way in," Julian said. "I'm just scared." "I know. But we're facing that fear together now. That's what matters." Julian pulled her into a hug, the first time he'd initiated full contact like this. Brielle wrapped her arms around him, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the warmth of his body. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other. "Progress," Julian whispered. "Progress," Brielle agreed. The next day, Julian asked Brielle to accompany him to his therapy appointment. They sat in Dr. Helen Morrison's calm, plant-filled office, and Brielle held Julian's hand as he spoke about his fears. "I'm terrified that when Brielle sees my scars, she'll look at me differently," Julian admitted. "That the attraction will die. That I'll see pity or disgust in her eyes." "Have you considered that your fear is based on assumptions rather than reality?" Dr. Morrison asked. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner. "Brielle has stayed despite a year of emotional neglect. She's working with you to build a community center. She's met your family. She clearly loves you. Why do you think a few scars would change that?" "Because they changed how I see myself," Julian said quietly. "Exactly. The problem isn't the scars. It's how you've internalized them." Dr. Morrison turned to Brielle. "How do you feel about Julian's concerns?" "I wish I could make him see himself the way I see him," Brielle said. "The scars are just skin. They don't change who he is inside. His kindness, his intelligence, his passion for making a difference. That's what I fell in love with." "You hear that, Julian?" Dr. Morrison said. "Brielle loves you for who you are, not what you look like. But until you can accept yourself, you'll struggle to believe she accepts you." Over the next weeks, Julian started attending therapy twice a week. He invited Brielle to some sessions, working through their communication patterns, their expectations, their fears about intimacy. It was hard work, emotionally exhausting but necessary. At home they continued building their connection. They cooked dinner together, laughing when Julian accidentally added salt instead of sugar to a dessert. They watched old movies, argued good-naturedly about which actor was better in which role. They took long walks in the evening, holding hands and talking about their days. Physical affection increased gradually. Julian would kiss Brielle's forehead, her cheek, her hand. He'd put his arm around her while they watched television. He'd hug her goodbye when he left for meetings. Each touch was careful, testing boundaries, but they were becoming more comfortable with each other. One evening, Brielle was getting ready for bed when Julian knocked on her door. He was wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair messy, his feet bare. He looked younger, more vulnerable. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Of course." He sat on the edge of her bed, his hands clasped between his knees. "Dr. Morrison thinks I'm ready to show you the scars. She thinks the longer I wait, the more power I give them." Brielle's heart raced. "Are you ready?" "I don't know. But I want to try. I'm tired of hiding. Tired of letting fear control our marriage." "Okay," Brielle said softly. "I'm here. Whatever you need." Julian took a deep breath, then slowly pulled off his t-shirt. The scars were extensive, just as he'd said. They ran across his chest and abdomen, raised and discolored, evidence of serious trauma and multiple surgeries. Some were neat lines, precise cuts from surgical interventions. Others were more jagged, the result of the accident itself. Brielle looked at them without flinching, without recoiling. She saw what they represented: pain, survival, strength. Julian had endured something terrible and come through it. These scars were proof of his resilience. "Can I touch them?" she asked. Julian nodded, unable to speak. Brielle reached out and gently traced one of the scars with her fingertips. Julian's breath hitched, but he didn't pull away. She explored each one, learning the landscape of his survival, honoring the pain he'd endured. "You're beautiful," she said finally. Julian let out a choked laugh. "Brielle? You are. Not despite these scars, but including them. They're part of your story. They show that you survived something horrible. That you're strong. That you didn't give up." She looked up at him, meeting his eyes. "I meant what I said in Dr. Morrison's office. These don't change how I see you. If anything, they make me love you more, because now I understand how much courage it took for you to let me in." Tears streamed down Julian's face. "I was so afraid you'd be disgusted." "Never," Brielle said firmly. She moved closer and kissed one of the scars on his chest, then another. "These are part of you. And I love all of you." Julian pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as he cried. All the fear, all the shame, all the pain of the past 3 years poured out of him. Brielle held him through it, stroking his hair, murmuring words of comfort and love. When the storm passed, Julian pulled back and cupped her face in his hands. "Thank you. For seeing me. For accepting me. For not giving up on us. We're a team now," Brielle said. "We face things together." Julian leaned down and kissed her. Really kissed her for the first time since their wedding. It was soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, both of them were smiling through tears. "I love you," Julian said. "I should have said it every day this past year. I love you, Brielle. So much." "I love you too," Brielle whispered. Julian put his shirt back on, and they lay down together on Brielle's bed, just holding each other. It wasn't the night their marriage would be consummated, but it was the night they became truly intimate in the ways that mattered most. Emotional honesty, vulnerability, trust. "We're going to be okay," Julian said as they drifted toward sleep. "Better than okay," Brielle replied. "We're going to be great." Have you ever been afraid to show someone the parts of yourself you think are broken? Brielle and Julian's journey reminds us that real love accepts all of us, scars and all. If this story is touching your heart, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think will happen next. Will their marriage finally become everything they hoped for? 3 months after that pivotal night, the community center was ready. The old school building had been transformed into a bright, welcoming space filled with possibility. The walls were painted in cheerful colors: yellow, blue, green, red. Each classroom had been converted for a specific purpose: art studio, music room, computer lab, gymnasium, library. The day before the grand opening, Brielle stood in the main hall, looking at everything they'd built. Julian came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You did this," he said. "This is all you." "We did this," Brielle corrected. "I couldn't have done it without you. I just wrote the checks. You had the vision, you made it real." The grand opening celebration drew over 300 people. Local families, city officials, donors, media, and the children who would use the center all crowded into the space. Balloons and banners decorated the halls. Food trucks lined the street outside. A local band played music on a small stage in the gymnasium. Patricia Foster stood at the front with Brielle and Julian, beaming with pride. "This is exactly what this community needed," she said. "I'm so proud of you both." Brielle stepped up to the microphone to give her speech. She wore a bright red dress, her hair styled in natural curls, the necklace Julian had given her on their anniversary glinting at her throat. Julian stood beside her in a blue suit, his hand on her lower back, offering support. "Thank you all for being here today," Brielle began. Her voice was strong and clear, even though her hands trembled slightly. "This center represents a dream I've had since I was a child, growing up in a neighborhood much like this one. I watched talented kids go without opportunities because their families couldn't afford music lessons or art supplies or sports equipment. I watched potential go untapped because there was nowhere safe and enriching for children to go after school." She gestured to the space around them. "This center changes that. Starting Monday, we'll offer free programming to any child in this community. Art, music, sports, tutoring, life skills. We have a team of dedicated staff members ready to nurture every child who walks through these doors." Brielle's eyes found Julian in the crowd. None of this would have been possible without my husband, Julian Foster. He believed in this dream when it was just an idea. He provided the resources to make it real. But more than that, he showed me that when you have privilege and resources, you have a responsibility to use them to lift others up. Thank you, Julian, for being my partner in every sense of the word. The crowd applauded and Julian's eyes shone with emotion. When Brielle stepped away from the microphone, he kissed her in front of everyone, a gesture of love and pride that made the crowd cheer even louder. Local news crews captured footage of children exploring the new facilities. The art studio had easels, paints, clay drawing supplies. The music room had instruments, guitars, keyboards, drums, even a piano donated by a local music store. The computer lab gleamed with new equipment. The gymnasium had basketball hoops, volleyball nets, and equipment for a dozen different sports. Destiny, the 10-year-old who'd asked if the program would really be free, found Brielle in the art studio. Miss Brielle, is it true I can come here every day after school? Every single day, Brielle confirmed. And on weekends too. And it's really free? My mom doesn't have to pay anything? Not a penny. That's the whole point. This is your space. Yours and every other kid's in the neighborhood. Destiny threw her arms around Brielle's waist. Thank you. Thank you so much. Brielle hugged the little girl back, tears streaming down her face. This was why they'd done all of this work. Throughout the day, Julian stayed by Brielle's side, greeting donors, talking to families, playing basketball with some of the older kids. He looked happier than she'd ever seen him, fully engaged and present. As the sun began to set and the crowd thinned, Brielle and Julian stood in the main hall, exhausted but elated. We did it, Brielle said. You did it, Julian corrected. I'm just lucky enough to be married to the woman who made it happen. Patricia approached with a photographer. One more picture of the two of you. This needs to be documented. They posed together, Julian's arm around Brielle's waist, both of them smiling genuinely. The photographer captured image after image, them laughing together, Brielle adjusting Julian's tie, Julian kissing her temple. Beautiful, the photographer said. You two are clearly in love. After everyone left, Brielle and Julian walked through the empty center one last time before locking up. Their footsteps echoed in the quiet halls. How do you feel? Julian asked. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, Brielle said. Like we're exactly where we're supposed to be. In the art studio, Julian stopped and turned to face her. 3 months ago you were packing a suitcase ready to leave me. Now we're here, having opened a community center together, genuinely happy. It feels like a miracle. Not a miracle. Just two people choosing to fight for their marriage instead of giving up. Brielle took his hands. Julian, you've worked so hard to overcome your fears. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. Your patience, your love, your willingness to give me another chance. He cupped her face in his hands. I want to make love to you tonight. Really, fully, the way I should have on our wedding night. If you're ready. Brielle's heart soared. I'm ready. I've been ready. They drove home in comfortable silence, anticipation building between them. When they entered the mansion, Julian took her hand and led her to his bedroom. I had the staff prepare something, he said, opening the door. The room had been transformed. Candles provided soft light. Rose petals were scattered across the bed. Soft music played from hidden speakers. It was romantic and beautiful and perfect. Julian, Brielle breathed. I wanted our first time to be special. To make up for the wedding night I stole from us. He pulled her close. I love you, Brielle. I want to show you how much. I love you too, she whispered. They moved toward the bed together, finally ready to fully become husband and wife. The morning after, Brielle woke up wrapped in Julian's arms, sunlight streaming through the windows. She felt content, complete, finally truly married. Julian stirred beside her, his eyes opening slowly. Good morning, Mrs. Foster, he said with a sleepy smile. Good morning, Mr. Foster, she replied, kissing him softly. They stayed in bed for a while, talking and laughing, marveling at how far they'd come. Eventually, hunger drove them downstairs for breakfast, which they ate together in the small dining room that had become their favorite space. I have something for you, Julian said after they'd finished eating. He handed her an envelope. Inside were official documents. Brielle scanned them, her eyes widening. You're making me co-director of your charitable foundation? With full decision-making power and a salary that reflects the value of your work. You've proven you have a gift for this kind of project. The community center is just the beginning. I want us to do more together. Julian, this is... Brielle couldn't find words. This is incredible. Thank you. Yes, absolutely yes. Over the following weeks, Brielle dove into her new role. She learned about the Foundation's existing projects, identified areas for improvement, and proposed new initiatives. Julian taught her about investment strategies, how to assess grant applications, how to ensure donated money was used effectively. They made a formidable team. Julian had the business acumen and connections. Brielle had the vision and the ability to connect with communities. Together, they identified projects that would make real differences in people's lives. Scholarship programs, housing initiatives, medical clinics in underserved areas. You're a natural at this, Julian said one evening as they reviewed proposals in his home office. You understand how to balance compassion with practical considerations. That's rare. I had a good teacher, Brielle replied, squeezing his hand. The community center thrived. Within 2 months of opening, they were serving 200 children daily. Success stories began to emerge. Kids improving their grades thanks to tutoring, teenagers discovering talents in art and music, families connecting through parent workshops. Brielle had added to the programming. One afternoon, Brielle brought Julian to meet her grandmother. Evelyn Thompson lived in a comfortable nursing home thanks to Julian's financial support, though Brielle hadn't told her grandmother where the money came from. Grandma, this is Julian. My husband, Brielle said, leading him to where her grandmother sat in the common area, a lap blanket over her legs. Evelyn looked up with sharp, assessing eyes. Even with Alzheimer's, she had moments of clarity, and this appeared to be one of them. The husband who treated my grandbaby like she didn't exist for a year? Julian had the grace to look ashamed. Yes, ma'am. That was me. I was wrong, and I'm spending every day trying to make it right. Evelyn studied him for a long moment. You rich? Grandma, Brielle protested. I'm asking a question. Evelyn's gaze never left Julian's face. Yes, ma'am, I am, Julian said honestly. And you giving my Brielle access to that money? Treating her like a real partner? I am. She's co-director of my charitable foundation now. We make decisions together. Good. Because money ain't worth nothing if you're not using it to help people. You hear me? I do, ma'am. Julian smiled. That's exactly what Brielle taught me. Evelyn's expression softened slightly. You treating her right now? Making her happy? I'm trying every day. Your granddaughter is the best thing that ever happened to me. It took me too long to realize that, but I know it now. Humph, Evelyn said again, but this time with approval. Well, you better keep it up. Brielle's special. Always has been. She got a heart bigger than the ocean and enough love to fill the world. You're lucky she chose you. I know I am, Julian said softly, looking at Brielle with such love it made her chest ache. They visited for an hour, Julian patiently answering Evelyn's questions, listening to her stories about Brielle's childhood, admiring the paintings Evelyn had done years ago that decorated her room. By the end, Evelyn had warmed to him completely. You're a good man, she told Julian as they were leaving. You take care of my girl. Always, Julian promised. In the car, Brielle wiped tears from her eyes. Thank you for being so patient with her. And for the nursing home. It's so much nicer than the place she was in before. She's your family. That makes her my family too. Julian took her hand. Besides, she's right. You're special. And I am lucky. That weekend, Kendra visited again, this time with her boyfriend Marcus. They sat in the garden, enjoying the warm afternoon. I have to admit, Kendra said, watching Julian and Marcus bond over sports talk, I didn't think this would work out. But you two look genuinely happy now. We are, Brielle confirmed. It's not perfect. We still have rough days when Julian's insecurities flare up or when I worry about slipping back into old patterns. But we talk about it now. We work through things together. That's what marriage should be, Kendra said. Partnership. Teamwork. It's nice to see you finally have that. Speaking of partnerships, Brielle said with a knowing smile, when are you and Marcus getting engaged? Kendra laughed. Let's focus on your happy ending first. Mine can come later. As the sun set, the four of them had dinner together, laughing and talking. Julian fit seamlessly into the conversation, teasing Kendra about her devotion to reality TV shows, debating politics with Marcus, making Brielle laugh with stories about mishaps at his company. After their guests left, Brielle and Julian cleaned up together, a comfortable domestic routine they developed. I like your friends, Julian said, loading dishes into the dishwasher. They like you too. Finally. You've won Kendra over, which is no small feat. I'm just glad people who love you can see that I love you too. He closed the dishwasher and pulled her close. Every day with you is better than the last. I didn't think that was possible, but it's true. Same here, Brielle said, wrapping her arms around his neck. Remember when you said we were two halves of one heart? The necklace. You're still wearing it. Julian touched the pendant at her throat. Every day. Because you were right. We fit together. We make each other better. They swayed together in the kitchen, dancing to music only they could hear, lost in their own perfect moment. 2 months later, Brielle arrived home from a long day at the community center to find the mansion transformed. A trail of rose petals led from the front door through the house. Soft music floated through the air. Candles flickered on every surface. Julian, she called out. Follow the petals, his voice called back. Smiling, Brielle followed the trail up the stairs down the hall to the master bedroom. The door was open and inside Julian waited. He'd changed since leaving the community center earlier, now wearing dress pants and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked nervous and excited and hopeful. What's all this? Brielle asked, even though her heart already knew. We've been married for 15 months, Julian said. But in many ways we're just beginning. I wanted to do something special. To celebrate not just our anniversary, but everything we've overcome to get here. He led her to the bed, where a beautiful green dress was laid out alongside a note. Dinner first. I made reservations at that restaurant you've been wanting to try. Then if you want, we come back here and really celebrate. Brielle's eyes filled with happy tears. You're so romantic. Only for you, Julian said, kissing her forehead. Now go get ready. Our reservation is in an hour. Dinner was perfect. They went to a rooftop restaurant downtown with views of the city lights. They ate slowly, savoring each course, talking about everything and nothing. Julian held her hand across the table, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. I've been thinking about the future, Julian said over dessert. About what we want our life to look like. And? Brielle prompted. I want children. With you. I want to fill our house with love and laughter. I want to raise kids who know they're valued, who understand the importance of helping others, who see their parents as true partners. He paused. What do you think? Brielle's smile was radiant. I want that too. All of it. Good. Because I've also been thinking about expanding our charitable work. Opening more community centers in other cities. Building a network of support for families who need it. I want us to do it together. I would love that, Brielle said. Julian, you've become everything I hoped for and more. I'm so proud of us. Me too. They drove home slowly, neither wanting the evening to end. But when they entered the bedroom, both of them knew this was where the real celebration would begin. Julian cupped Brielle's face in his hands. Thank you for not giving up on me. On us. You saved my life in more ways than one. You saved mine too, Brielle whispered. You showed me what real partnership looks like. What it means to work through hard things together instead of running away. They made love slowly, tenderly, each touch a reaffirmation of their commitment. Julian was gentle and attentive, making sure Brielle felt cherished and desired. She explored his body without hesitation, kissing his scars, showing him through actions that she loved every part of him. Afterward, they lay tangled together, both glowing with happiness. I can't believe I almost lost this, Julian said, stroking Brielle's hair. If you'd left that night. But I didn't. I stayed. We both chose to fight for this. Best decision I ever made, Julian murmured, pulling her closer. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, finally experiencing the intimacy they'd been denied for so long. When Brielle woke in the middle of the night, she watched Julian sleep, his face peaceful and relaxed in a way it never used to be. He'd healed. They'd both healed. She touched the necklace at her throat, the two halves of one heart, and smiled. They'd put those halves back together, stronger than ever. The autumn sun streamed through the windows of the original community center as Brielle stood in the art studio, watching children work on paintings. One hand rested on her rounded belly, feeling the baby kick. At 6 months pregnant, she was glowing with health and happiness. How are my two favorite people? Julian asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her. 3 favorite people, Brielle corrected, laughing. We're having twins, remember? How could I forget? My mother reminds me every time we talk. He kissed her neck. The center looks great. The new programs are all running smoothly. In the years since their second anniversary, their lives had transformed completely. They'd opened 3 additional community centers in neighboring cities, each one serving hundreds of children. Brielle had been featured in several magazines as an emerging philanthropist, though she always insisted on crediting the communities themselves for the center's success. Julian had stepped back from day-to-day operations at his tech company, hiring a CEO to run things while he focused on charitable work. He and Brielle had become true partners in every sense, making decisions together, supporting each other's ideas, building a life of meaning and purpose. Patricia called, Julian said. She's coming next week to help set up the nursery. She brought samples of about 50 different paint colors. Brielle laughed. Of course she did. Your mother doesn't do anything halfway. None of the Foster women do, Julian teased. You're no different. You're already planning programming for the 4th community center and we haven't even broken ground yet. Details? Brielle said with a wave of her hand. They walked through the center together, greeting staff members and children. Destiny, now 11, ran up to show them a painting sheet completed. This is beautiful, Brielle said, examining the colorful landscape. Have you thought about entering it in that young artist competition I told you about? Really? You think it's good enough? Destiny's eyes were wide with hope. I think it's excellent. Julian, what do you think? Julian studied the painting seriously. I think we're looking at a future famous artist. You should definitely enter Destiny. The girl beamed and ran off to tell her friends. Julian and Brielle continued their tour, stopping to watch a basketball game in the gymnasium, peek into the music room where a guitar lesson was in progress, and check on the computer lab where teenagers were learning coding. We did this, Brielle said softly. We really did this. You did this, Julian corrected as he always did. I just provided support. We're a team, Brielle insisted, taking his hand. Equal partners. That's what makes it work. That evening they hosted a small dinner party at the mansion. Patricia was there, along with Kendra and Marcus, who had gotten engaged the month before. Evelyn, having a good day, had been brought from the nursing home to join them. The dining room was filled with laughter and love. A toast, Patricia said, raising her glass. To Brielle and Julian, who proved that second chances are real and that love can overcome anything. And to my future grandchildren, who are lucky enough to have parents like you. Everyone raised their glasses, echoing the sentiment. Brielle felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed with gratitude for this life they'd built. After dinner, Julian asked everyone to move to the library. Brielle and I have an announcement. Once everyone was settled, Julian took Brielle's hand. 2 years ago our marriage was in crisis. We'd spent a year as strangers living in the same house. But instead of giving up, Brielle gave me a chance to make things right. And slowly, day by day, we built something real together. Now we have a family on the way and work that gives our lives meaning, Brielle continued. But we realized we never properly celebrated our marriage. So, we're renewing our vows, Julian finished. In 3 weeks. We want all of you there to witness us recommit to each other, but this time knowing exactly what we're promising. Patricia wiped happy tears from her eyes. Kendra squeezed Marcus's hand, smiling. Even Evelyn, who sometimes struggled to remember recent events, beamed with joy. About time, Evelyn said. Do it right this time. We will, Grandma, Brielle promised. The vow renewal ceremony took place at the original community center, the place that symbolized their partnership. 200 people attended. Staff members, donors, children and families from the center, business associates and friends. Brielle wore a flowing maroon dress that accommodated her growing belly. Julian wore a navy suit, looking handsome and relaxed and genuinely happy. They stood under an arch decorated with flowers, holding hands as they spoke their new vows. Brielle, Julian began, his voice steady and sure, 2 years ago I promised to love you for the rest of my life. I meant that promise, but I didn't know how to live it. I let fear control me, and in doing so, I hurt you deeply. Today I'm making that promise again, but this time I know what it really means. It means showing up every day even when it's hard. It means being vulnerable, letting you see all of me, trusting that you won't turn away. It means being your true partner in all things. I love you more than words can express, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it. Tears streamed down Brielle's face as she spoke her own vows. Julian, you gave me the greatest gift. You let me see you. The real you, fears and scars and all. You trusted me with your vulnerabilities, and in return, I trust you with my heart. You've shown me what true partnership looks like, what it means to build a life together based on honesty and mutual support. I love you not because you're perfect, but because you're willing to grow, to change, to fight for us. I promise to stand by your side through whatever comes, to celebrate your victories and hold you through your struggles. You're my best friend, my partner, my love. Always. They exchanged new rings, simple bands engraved with the date of their vow renewal. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Julian kissed Brielle deeply, and the crowd erupted in applause. The reception was joyful, filled with music and dancing and laughter. Children from the center performed songs they'd learned in music class. Friends gave toasts. Patricia cried happy tears throughout the entire event. As the sun set, Julian led Brielle to a quiet corner of the center. Happy. Deliriously, Brielle said, leaning into him. This is everything I dreamed of and more. We have so much ahead of us, Julian said, placing his hand on her belly. 2 babies, more community centers, a lifetime of working together to make a difference. I can't wait. Neither can I, Brielle said. Thank you, Julian. For choosing us. For not giving up. For becoming the man I always knew you could be. Thank you for seeing that man even when I couldn't see him myself. They stood together, watching their guests celebrate, surrounded by the community they'd built and the family that loved them. The community center hummed with life and laughter, a testament to what could be accomplished when people chose love over fear, partnership over isolation, hope over despair. 2 years ago, Brielle had been packing a suitcase, ready to walk away from a marriage that felt dead. Now she stood with her hand in her husband's, carrying their children, surrounded by the visible proof that second chances were real and that love, true love, could overcome anything. Julian pulled her close and whispered, I would do it all again just to end up here with you. Me too, Brielle whispered back. Every difficult moment, every tear, every struggle. It all brought us here. As the evening stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they returned to the celebration, ready to dance and laugh and celebrate the life they'd built together. A life based on kindness, hope, and love. Always love.